His slogan in 2004 is "Let's make one America." He talks about these two Americas, which is like a sort of a powerful phrase and set of things to say. His argument is that he's the best messenger because he has a direct gut connection with the working class, with the white working class, is what he means to say. But what are the details? What do you actually want to do with trade policy? He's just kind of saying, like, I'm the guy.
I think the brilliance of the two Americas is also that it could be based on race, or it could be rich white people and poor white people. And it's vague, so he's hoping to be all things to all people.
In the annals of time, riding social forces as they crest and crash under the shores of history, some would-be heroes stumble but manage to recover their breath. Others are reduced to the flotsam and jetsam of nostalgia. These others are our subjects. They are the vanquished.
Welcome to The Vanquished. Anders J. Lee here with Freddie G.
So happy to be here.
And we are joined by two special guests. They are the hosts of one of my new favorite podcasts, actually, Remember Shuffle, which is about the 2000s, a.k.a. the aughts, depending on your preferred nomenclature. Ben and Jordano, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for that introduction. Oh, my God, that was so nice.
Is that Miss Teen South Carolina?
Do you know her?
I'm familiar, yes.
Can you introduce me?
Oh, hey, if I get her number, I'll send it to you, definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's great to be here.
Do you guys have a take on aughts versus 2000s? I always felt like 2000s is too clunky and aughts kind of gets the job done, but no one understands when I say aughts. They don't know what I'm talking about.
I 1,000% agree with you. I've always thought about this. I wish there was a better term for the decade. I've tried to come up with my own, and it's still not good enough. I think maybe millies could work, but it's still bad compared to like 90s, 80s, 70s.
Okay.
Millie's is funny. Yeah, Millie's is good. I say 2000s. It just sounds like you're talking about the 1900s, or it sounds like you didn't survive to make it to the 2000s.
The millennials will be horrified to know that pretty soon it's just going to be called the turn of the century. I know the millennials are just free falling out of cultural relevance, and that's going to be the stake through the millennial generation's heart when it becomes the turn of the century.
It's the turn of the millennium, though. That's where they get their name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big point. The year 2000, which actually. There's another hot take I have, is that I consider the year 2000 the 90s, and that's not to say that Remember Shuffle should not cover the year 2000. A lot of important, culturally relevant stuff happened in that year, but I'm very much the calendar started on year one, so a decade is the one digit to one digit thing. So 2011 is where I view the 2010s is starting. Do you guys have a take on that?
I think our arbitrary sub-periodization of the decade is you have everything before 9/11, which is very end of history, very 90s, very optimistic. You have the patriotic bloodlust of the post 9/11 era. And then you have that brief window of optimism from Obama's election until he loses the midterms and we all figure out we are not getting socialized medicine.
Yes. Okay. That's a good way to lay it out. Definitely. Well, our subject today is someone I wanted to talk about with you guys because he pretty much exclusively in the public consciousness was contained to the aughts/2000s. That is John Edwards, who was a senator for North Carolina, in case people aren't familiar, vice presidential nominee in 2004, then ran for president in 2008, and had a big time sex scandal. What were your guys' first exposures to John Edwards? We like to begin by talking first point of exposure with these losers. Fred, what was the first time you heard about Johnny?
So
Yes?
I asked my mom what she remembered, and she said he was really, really hot. And that is the number one thing people would say about him until he had the sex scandal. Not surprising. For me, he's the hot Southern guy in the 2004 debates. He ran in 2004, and then after finishing second, got to be the VP nominee. He had the two Americas, and he was with John Kerry. They both passed Howard Dean in Iowa, and then Dean screamed about it.
And you guys were monitoring this, even though you are from Canada. I know you were keeping track at the time of goings on in the U.S. What do you remember about John Edwards as young boys?
From the time, basically next to nothing. I was pretty young for the 2004 run. And I definitely don't remember the 2004 VP debates very well. But I remember him as kind of an also-ran in 2008. The guy who... The most notable thing about him was that Hilary didn't even beat him in Iowa. And I remember the pundits saying that. Could you believe it? Hilary couldn't even beat John Edwards. Like, from the outset, he was kind of an also-ran because the writing was on the wall that this was going to be a Hillary Clinton-Obama matchup in the primaries.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that she was thought to be the presumptive nominee for much of 2007. And he was maybe going to be the only guy standing against her, but then in walks Barry Obama. What about you, Jordano?
I had the same reaction as Fred's mom, honestly. I think I was like, hey, he's so handsome. Oh, my God. Yeah, I don't remember clocking him at all until I think I saw the movie The Campaign and being like, oh, this guy kind of reminds me of John Edwards, the Will Ferrell character in that movie.
Yes, I definitely, which is takes place in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I'll say my first exposure to him was in 2004 when he was selected as vice president, because there's a big snafu. A newspaper reported Kerry as picking Dick Gephardt, which later on Kerry would say he wished he had done that. And then he instead introduced John Edwards. And my first impression was that, like, this is going to be great, because I watched SNL at the time, and Will Forte looked exactly like John Edwards. So it's like, this is going to be perfect casting. Just for some reason, the two guys looking alike and one doing a parody of the other guy was really exciting to me at the time as a 13-year-old.
Yeah, let me add. So Will Forte did get to play him. There's one thing before the pick even. They're having a party with all the Democratic potential candidates, and Will Forte is playing John Edwards, who's hosting the party, and they're playing up the effeminate angle that people sometimes say about Edwards. So Edwards is in an apron, and he's serving everyone food.
Yeah, and that was something that came through with him, is that was a knock against him from conservatives, that he was femme, that he was too ladylike. Ann Coulter got in trouble for dropping the F slur against Edwards later on, which we'll get to. But kind of to summarize his background, he does grow up poor. He's, as he loves to say, I was a son of a millworker. His father, was hard scrabble, and he becomes a lawyer. And then his son dies in an auto accident, and he's able to use that in a court case, and gets a huge settlement, makes a ton of money as a trial lawyer. So, and this is in the 80s and 90s, when trial lawyers are like the arch nemesis of the Republican Party. They're saying...
Can we talk about his law career for a bit? He's like a tort
definitely.
lawyer. And do you remember that urban myth as a kid that people told you if you sat on like the pool filter, it would suck your insides out, it would disembowel you?
I've heard that.
That's not only is that real, but John Edwards is like the lawyer in that case. I saw in the notes and he won like a $15 million settlement, or I think it was a $24 million settlement. And apparently you keep 1/3 of it as a tort lawyer. And so he made a ton of money in the 90s busting companies for like liability lawsuits like this.
Right. So all the tort reform that was being proposed by the Republicans, this was the villain who was suing honest pool companies that were just had a freak accident in one person's intestines. Frankly, the intestines were asking for it. They just got sucked out, just pure circumstance. And yeah,
I
Four
could see
kids
him
trying
being
to
so
discover
good in that
themselves.
courtroom. Imagine him in that courtroom as like the country lawyer, the Southern like. There's not a dry eye in the house, I bet.
yeah, no, definitely good performer.
I'm glad I never learned how to swim. Yeah, the pools were so dangerous. Yeah, that's
You don't know how to swim, really?
No, I can't swim. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's good to know. And if we're ever in a life or death situation,
Yeah. Anders hired me on this pod because I make him seem sexy and coordinated.
You might say you make me look like John Edwards. But his wife is a big figure in his life. She is 4 years older than John, and by conventional beauty standards, some people would say does not age as well. And throughout his career, his talking point is that there are two Americas that comes through in his presidential campaigns, and it is what kind of carries him to victory in 1998 when he defeats a Republican incumbent for the U.S. Senate. To this day, I believe John Edwards is the only living person to have held a Senate seat from North Carolina as a Democrat. They all have been kind of wiped out. But he's very kind of Clintonian in a lot of ways,
Yes.
even though his coding is slightly more progressive. He tries to pitch himself as like the left alternative to the Republicans and Democratic centrism. But at this time, the Southern Democrats dominate the Democratic Party. Fred, you were kind of saying he's like Al Gore, but without the Riz.
He is the Southern voice. Al Gore is from Tennessee, a Southern state as well. But Al Gore is the son of a senator. He just seems like he's like a white collar guy. Edwards kind of has that. He can talk like the son of a mill worker, even if he actually never worked a manual labor job in his life. He has the football star thing as well. That's helpful. Also, I think he is sort of halfway in between Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. He's like the in-between state where it's like, okay, you're talking a little more progressive, but you're not going as far as to be a black man yet.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right where the 90s and the early aughts is the kind of last dying gasp of the Southern Democrats in a major leadership role in the party. The Democratic Party, like go look up those electoral maps from 92 and 96.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's unrecognizable, Georgia, Arkansas. I think Louisiana goes blue in one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And the Democratic Party existentially is looking for any way to not talk about class all the time. And I think they saw the Southern Democrat as a way, as like a kind of proto-id poll where they can talk about regionalism, right? We can just like get the South on board by running one of their guys. And this is only for the real, news heads out there. But there was an attempt, at least in media circles, to run this script back with like Mountain West Democrats in the 2010s, right?
Yeah.
Your John Hickenloopers.
Yeah.
Which is, it's even worse because they're just centrist Democrats who also worship guns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Instead of where they're from, how about what policies they're advocating? But I wonder if what the calculus was for not selecting him as VP. He was considered as Gore's VP in 2000. Ultimately, he goes with a Northeastern centrist, Joe Lieberman. But there's a possibility he's going to get selected there. But he even says, wouldn't be that bad if I get the VP nomination, then Gore loses, because that kind of makes him a national figure.
I think Gore, I think Gore didn't want to be upstage. He's a younger, more handsome Al Gore. And I just don't think, so Gore picked a guy, just a Jewy looking guy who was clearly not more charismatic than Al Gore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But he is elected in 1998, so he serves only one term. He decides to not run for re-election to Senate in 2004, which is criticized by a lot of people, but there's some logic to it that comes through in the book that his former aide wrote. The Politician basically says North Carolina is trending Republican. There's a good shot I won't get reelected, so I might as well take a shot at the presidency. And he's making he's getting a lot of attention, frankly, because he's hot. That seems like the through line here. It's not because he's like passing a whole lot of bills or anything. He's being named the sexiest politician in People magazine for 2000. And he's getting invited to speak at places, but doesn't seem like he's doing a ton in the Senate.
Yeah, he's not heavy on the policy. It's unclear how much he knows about the issues. He even has a Ted Kennedy moment. He's meeting with a former Clinton chief of staff, and he's like, well, why do you want to be president? Luckily, this isn't on TV. Ted Kennedy's moment was on national TV. Because Ted knows how to fail. And they ask him, why do you want to be president? Why are you the most qualified? And he just doesn't really have an answer. And then he just talks about his background and some like boring stump speech stuff. And he never really comes with a great answer. And he never forgives this Erskine Bowles guy for asking him.
Imagine that's your grudge against somebody when you want to run for president and you're really mad that somebody asks you why in a public place. Have
you thought about this?
Yeah, one thing that
say.
Comes through about John Edwards' personality is that he can be a very vindictive, grudge-bearing man.
Yes.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but when the sex scandal breaks, there are so many people in his orbit that are trying to give him good advice that he just ostracizes or fires or gets away from him.
Absolutely.
Like I would push back on the characterization that he was doing nothing in the Senate. He was voting for very important things, like authorizing George Bush to invade Iraq.
Yeah, and that's a vote that he will later kind of walk back. But there's a lot of stuff where, he's running for president as, again, trying to take the progressive lane. And he's like, but I'm Southern and progressive. Imagine that. But he voted for the Iraq War. He also voted for repealing the Glass-Steagall Act. So this is like clearly a guy who's just has naked ambition. And at that time, that seemed like the smart thing to do politically. And then later on, it seems politically advantageous to code more left.
Yeah, when he proposes specific policy programs, I've only heard him do it in the DNC speech in 2004. Like he has all this rhetoric about how like there's two Americas and we're going to make everybody equal. Like we're going to, fix the country. And then his policy programs are like a 15% like college tax rebate credit if you're the first person in your family to go to college, or like just the most minimal neoliberal like implementations. This is what he's so proud of in the DNC in 2004. Like as progressive as his like homey stories are, the actual things he wants to change is very little.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Bill de Blasio, who was mayor of New York City and would talk a big game. He talked about taking over Con Ed, municipalizing it, and then when it came down to it, pretty middle of the road policies on most things. On housing, he talked a big game and then basically did some good things for like upper middle class New Yorkers, and everyone else kind of they did better than under Eric Adams, but he definitely like a lot of noise and not a lot of implementation. But
gave us the ferry though. Ferry's pretty sick. The New York City ferry system got expanded under him. So all of the people who live in Dumbo and Williamsburg and Stuytown or all these affluent neighborhoods can bop around on the ferry.
That's true. That is a very de Blasio policy where it's like we're going to even it out a little bit. The snow pickup, I remember the rich neighborhoods during the blizzard of 15 were not attended to very quickly, which people blamed on de Blasio being a class warrior. But yeah, sort of, little things like that. But he has a healthcare proposal that's like, we'll put Medicare as an option for employers to put their employees on Medicare, which is kind of like a weird roundabout way into a public option. But he's not talking about what Kucinich is talking about. This is single payer health insurance, fully ending the Iraq war, rewriting trade deals, etc. But
let me say something about it. Kucinich. Kucinich is the exact opposite of John Edwards. Okay, he has the policies. He's weird looking, and his wife is much hotter than him. So they're the exact opposites.
His wife looks like she could be related to John Edwards. Like they could be fraternal twins or something.
If they had teamed up, that's 50-state victory right there. Two hot people. That's all we need.
But there was on the Iraq War vote. This comes through in the book by Andrew Young a little bit. There's Young at least tries to pitch himself as like a voice of dissent on Iraq. Is that fair to say, Fred?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Young is just like there's no connection between Iraq and 9/11, which anybody knew the whole time. And then Edwards is just like, well, Saddam's evil. Like, he's just gone full Bush on this, just saying that, okay, well, Saddam's evil. We got to do this. I got to be presidential and vote for this war. And Edwards just gets sucked in, and he's not willing to listen to much. Also, in general, Edwards is just not that good at foreign policy. So he's afraid to be bold, and then the staff around him are not going to be able to talk him out of it.
I think he's a bit of a neoconservative. Like watching him in the DNC speech talk about America as this like shining city on a hill for democracy and freedom, I can see him getting duped and like buying into what Doug Feith and Paul Wolfowitz were selling. We're doing this series on the Iraq War right now, and like he speaks in very neoconservative overtones in that speech, in his DNC speech in 2004, after the war is already not going well.
Yeah, definitely. And his focus is primarily domestic policy, and usually when that's the case, the rest gets filled in by the establishment, which at the time was the neocons or Democrats who were tailing neocons. And so when he runs in 2004, he's trying to make it an economic sort of domestic policy-based campaign, but at a time when, which is rare in American elections, most people's eyes are on the Middle East and on foreign policy. But he tries.
Even with the even with the domestic policy, he works from talking points backwards. So he just says his policies are whatever will sound good in a talking point. And he clearly hasn't thought much of them through.
But his slogan in 2004 is "Let's make one America." And he talks about these two Americas, which is like a sort of a powerful phrase and set of things to say, but his argument is that he's the best messenger because he has a direct gut connection with the working class, with the white working class, is what he means to say, particularly in the South. And he says, I still believe in America where the son of a Milwaukee could beat a son of the president for the White House. And yeah, on like trade, for instance, he'll say that trade is very personal to him because the mill that his dad worked in closed, and that's a powerful story. But what are the details, and what do you actually want to do with trade policy? Is just kind of saying like, I'm the guy because I came from I had this inspirational story.
I think the brilliance of the two Americas is also that it could be based on race, or it could be rich white people and poor white people, and it's vague. So he's hoping to be all things to all people. And
he makes an appeal to young people early on. I think this is how his campaign is announced in 2003. He goes on the Daily Show and says, "I'm running for president," and Jon Stewart is like, "This is a fake show, right?" But at the time, that was kind of the Daily Show election for Democrats. Why don't I ask you guys, what was the importance of like Jon Stewart and the Daily Show in that era, 2004?
We did an episode on the Daily Show, and 2004 falls into it's the Bush era. This is when he's at his best. Every hit joke is making clean contact. It's manna from heaven too, because you weren't really getting it from anywhere at that time.
This is peak Jon Stewart, and it's really interesting to see. I mean, he loves to use this kind of defense of "I'm not a newsman, I'm just a comedian," which he will use more and more as the Daily Show kind of peters off in the Obama era, and he starts getting really kind of navel-gazy, doing segments on how Fox News is reporting things. And I mean, Jon Stewart at the end of the day is there to book guests and get views. So do you know who the number one guest,
Uh,
do you know which guest has appeared on the Daily Show the most times?
I feel like I heard this at some point. It was John McCain.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh my God.
That was Jon Stewart's favorite Republican, the Maverick, who voted against the tax cuts or whatever. I think he might have eventually been eclipsed by Bill O'Reilly, because they love going on each other's shows and promoting their books and having quote unquote debates. But I think those are two of the top guests. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all to see both that John Edwards came on and then Jon Stewart, deflects a little bit with, oh, this is a fake show, this doesn't matter.
Yeah. Right. But the viewers are who Edwards is, like the college students, the sort of the anti-war left. He wants their support. He's not going to actually do much on the war, for instance, to earn it. But early on, he does.
And I was a college student. I was a college student then, and the college students were not that excited by him. There was Kucinich people. There was Dean people. I'm not even sure who else really, but yeah, I don't remember a lot of Edwards heads before he did well in Iowa. Like I had said in a previous episode, I knew one guy who liked John Kerry. Maybe a couple people liked Edwards because he was hot, but he was not. Yeah, the college students were going to flock to someone with better policies.
Yeah.
And he somehow gets chosen as the vice presidential pick. That's crazy. Was there anything from Kerry in that from Young on why he made that decision? Did he meet I know there was that story where he insisted that he would be the VP, but only if they sent him a private plane for the interview?
Yeah, later on. So after Edwards has dropped out, he is considered for vice president, and John Kerry, they don't really like each other. Edwards at one point says that John Kerry isn't that smart. That he's just a guy who reads the New York Times and gets all his ideas and takes from that. But he does get fussy about a private plane he wants to have sent to pick him up so he can meet with John Kerry, because he's going to select him and he wants to meet.
I was at Disney World with my family.
Yeah, he's at Disney World and John Kerry wants to talk to him. He wants him to come to D.C. and have a meeting. And Edwards is like, oh, if he doesn't send that plane, I'm not doing it. He's like... So, yeah, he's kind of a diva at this point, because early on in his career, I remember a quote that he would say as a joke, when he's running for Senate in 1998, he'd say as a joke, he'd be like, oh, they love me, sarcastically. And
they love me.
Yeah, that's what it becomes, though. Around this time, he's okay. They really love me. He's fully committed and is just the narcissism has fully taken over.
Yeah, Lady Gaga's The Fame Monster was about him, actually.
In terms of why Kerry put him on the ticket, I think this is once again an act of attempting to balance the ticket, right? For this, mythical please everyone and then please no one, where if we're going to get the New England liberal, quote unquote, who's going to be painted by Fox News as the most liberal member of the Senate, balance them out with the Southern boy, right? Because we did an episode on 2004 where in our research, I mean, I don't know how substantively this is sourced, but people around Kerry say that he asked John McCain to be his running mate multiple times, and he was willing to offer anything to get McCain on the ticket. You can be VP and Secretary of Defense as some kind of national security czar. That's balancing the ticket of a kind, I guess.
Yeah, McCain was the top. McCain was definitely the top pick, and he said no. They were even saying, McCain, you can stay Republican, but you just can't put an anti-choice, anti-abortion candidate, a person on the Supreme Court. And McCain just ends up saying no. I think he maybe has promised that he'll be able to get the 2008 nomination, which he gets. Another thing, so Edwards, the Edwards conversation about the private jet is taking place not only at Disney World in Orlando, but at Chef Mickey's, a restaurant apparently there. I've never been there. They clear out an area of Chef Mickey's for him to yell about the private jet because he doesn't want to fly commercial out there and then be rejected. He thinks he's just being included to fill out the roster. I read a Dick Cheney book when we did an earlier episode, and Cheney basically said John Kerry is the least decisive, least creative guy. So of course he just picked the guy who finished second in the primary, since that's not doesn't make means you don't have to form an opinion. That's just the path of least resistance.
Right. It's very much this thing like the caucus made the same kind of mistake, is that like you don't always want to balance the ticket because that often will just seem kind of incoherent. Like if you have like this short guy from Massachusetts and then this tall Texan, like there's not a lot of simpatico there. Similar thing happens in 2004. Instead of doing what Clinton did, for better or worse, which is choose just another Southern conservative Democrat, which could have been John Edwards maybe if Gore had stuck to that strategy. But he does do a lot better than people expect in the 2004 primary. He comes in second. Obviously, Kerry does blow him out of the water in terms of overall delegates, but he's kind of the last guy standing. And yeah, it is very much like, well, I guess I'll go with you. But Kerry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So Edwards had bet everything on Iowa, and he's in fourth place in Iowa. He does then he's in fourth place. Dean's leading. Then him and Kerry make a surge, but they surge together, and Edwards can't pass Kerry. And then when he doesn't have, when he's in second, Kerry gets the bigger bump, and Edwards is out of money and then really doesn't have a way to catch up. New Hampshire's a terrible state for Edwards, so that's not good. So Edwards is just kind of going to get to finish second in almost every primary. And usually that doesn't mean anything, but in this case, it means John Kerry is going to pick you for VP.
Mm-hmm. And there are some questions about how centrist he really is. The Chamber of Commerce does not like this pick. They throw all their support to Bush because of tort reform. And then Edwards gets kind of screwed by Kerry in the vice presidential debate, where he's going to face off against Cheney, who's this, old, beaten down, evil man, and they agree to a seated debate. This would be the perfect contrast if they're both standing. But this is another instance where, in the debates between Bush and Kerry, the ones that were at podiums, or podia, I guess is the plural, the TV networks heightened Bush's podium to make it even with Kerry's, which should have been a demand of the Kerry Edwards campaign to not do that, because if we're going for aesthetics, like that's a much better aesthetic for Kerry if he's taller than Bush. They concede this point too. They're like, okay, yeah, have them both sit. Andrew Young says presumably they got some kind of concession from Bush, but I never heard what it was.
Yeah, and talk about a Kerry misstep in the selection of Edwards. Like, I know the campaign hadn't shaped up fully to be the foreign policy election that it would eventually be. But like you just said, this is a guy who is weak on foreign policy. And the VP on the other side is the guy who was in cabinet in the Poppy Bush administration, a guy who's been around the block he did the first Gulf War. He did the one that worked for America.
Yeah.
And that's the contrast that you're going to have. Here is our hot, horny hillbilly going up against this absolute ghoul of the deep state. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, and I think Edwards is a bit in his head because he does not perform very well in this debate. I remember thinking at the time as a 13-year-old, oh, this is going to be like Nixon Kennedy. He's the contrast will be clear. There's old and weird versus young and vivacious. But seems like he's in over his head. He does have a line about experience that, he has the wrong kind of experience. I may not have a lot of experience, but it's better than his. And then he just kind of drops the ball on, to me, what seems like, and seemed at the time, like a really big layup, which is Cheney accuses Edwards of being gone all the time. And he says, your hometown paper calls you Senator Gone. Then Cheney says, this is the first time I have met you, which is an out and out lie. And Edwards, for whatever reason, doesn't say that it's a lie. He doesn't say, well, we met here, there, and this other place too. Then all of these videos came out after the debate of them meeting, and Edwards just doesn't pick that up for some reason.
Imagine Edwards pulled out a picture. He could have pulled a picture out of them together, or like in the same place. And he's a trial lawyer. He could have even gotten out of his seat and just he could have really owned it. Yeah, that was would have been an amazing moment.
Yeah,
that might have been some judo from Cheney, though. If he tried to say, no, we've met several times before, he just drops the Don Draper line, I'm sorry, I don't think about you at all.
That's how not memorable you were, John Edwards. And this is also the first place the lesbian daughter line of attack is trotted out, which it didn't get as much attention this time. But John Edwards does kind of subtly mention when they're asked about gay marriage. He's like, well, his daughter is a lesbian, just saying. Just want that to be stated on the record. Her daughter enjoys a clam bake.
When they go low, we go high, baby.
Yeah.
And Cheney does an awesome move where he says, thanks for saying nice things about my family. And then he's like, that's all I have to say. And he has 90 seconds to speak, and he uses 15 to kind of show a certain level of like being above it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But later, Kerry tries the same line, and it does not play very well about the lesbian daughter, which I know you guys talked about on your 2004 ep.
Yeah, because which one do you believe? Do you support gay rights, or are you homophobe baiting? Right.
One or the other, hard to tell. There's nothing. It's just like he mentions it in a way that's meant to like embarrass him rather than like point out a contradiction in something that affects someone close to him.
And you can tell Kerry is so uncomfortable when he says it. He's like, vice president's daughter. And there's like what feels like a 10-second pause. Is a lesbian.
And Mary Cheney's her name, and she's insane because she's actually working on the campaign. She's like her dad's like assistant or whatever. And even though they have this gay marriage amendment, she's like, I'm not going to quit. So she's like a huge hypocrite herself even.
Yeah, call them hypocrites. That would be better than just, just throwing it out there awkwardly. But election night, it goes on till the next day. The counting, possible shenanigans in Ohio, who knows? But Kerry does concede, and Kerry is to this day very salty about Edwards giving a speech introducing Kerry at Kerry's concession speech, which Kerry says seems like John Edwards' first speech for his 2008 campaign. These guys really don't like each other. Later on, when Kerry releases his memoir, he reveals that he thinks it was a mistake to select Edwards, which it seems like he thinks is going to be this huge revelation that everyone's going to like want to talk about. But just nobody. I know about it because I searched through these YouTube videos like a freak. But
no, it would have been Gephardt would have been better for the Midwest. Bob Graham was from Florida. He picks a guy from a region he's not going to really be able to win.
Bob Graham would have been so perfect because Florida and foreign policy, and to the left of the Kerry and Bush, who were running on basically the same Iraq war policy. Actually, Kerry in many ways is running to the right of Bush on wanting to send more troops. But he is kind of set up, though, before for the next campaign. He never really stops running. He gets a quick job on Wall Street, John Edwards does, which he later says, like, oh, that was just so I could understand how the economy works better for the connection between Main Street and Wall Street. But his wife is also dealing with cancer, which is diagnosed right before the 2004 election.
John Edwards doesn't understand that you can make your bag after you're done doing politics, but you need to do it sequentially, like the Obamas or like W. But you need to like pretend to be a public servant for a while, Yeah,
it's not a great look. He kind of. It doesn't. I don't think he does it very long. But he's obviously is wealthy guy and likes having money. His house is enormous. They have a part of their property which is referred to as the barn, which is just a massive building, which it may be this or another part of the property, the estate, that is an exact replica of the UNC basketball court. It's just like where he hangs out and spends his time. And that's where he and Elizabeth live with their kids. They got 2 young kids and then an older daughter. And there's just a lot of similarities between them and Bill and Hilary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think I remember reading his house is something like 24,000 square feet, I think. It's enormous. And his aides talk about the 3 H's, which are his 3 vulnerabilities. And those are the hedge fund, the house, and his hair. Because on top of being like insatiably greedy and liking the finer creature comforts in life, he starts getting $400 haircuts. And his hairdresser said at one sitting costs as high as $1,250 for a haircut. Oof. So there's this massive disconnect where so much of his brand, like you've been saying, is the narrative, is the story of son of a mill worker in the mill clothes, first person in his family to even go to college. But it's not aligned at all with his actions as they are now. And his consumption patterns. Yes.
And the narcissism is also leading him to make some poor decisions in life. He has one affair that we know about. I have to wonder if he didn't step out on Elizabeth on other occasions. But he meets Rielle Hunter in 2006. Fred, how does that chance meeting occur?
So she sees him at like a bar, and then she's like, she's talking to her friend or whatever, and she's like, "Oh, John, that's not John Edwards. John Edwards isn't that hot." Which is so the insane thing is like his whole thing is that he was hot on TV. She didn't think he was hot on TV, but she thought he was hot in person. And then at some point, like she walks by him, and she's like, "You're so hot." And he's just like, okay, I thought this was going to happen. So he tells her that he's hiring her to like be a documentary, like to make documentaries about him. I'm not sure how qualified she is, but
I think she sold him on that. She was like, I want people to see you the way you actually exist, how hot you are right now. On TV, they don't do you justice, right? I want to make a series that shows your true light. She's like a universe woman, like, ex-hippie party girl. Like she's all about this kind of energy and aura.
She at one point she self-identifies as a witch. That's in her background.
Oh no!
This really did make me think that there's a kind of a if we want to equalize things with gender, there needs to be more men like Rielle Hunter. She is the inspiration for a novelist who based a character around her, a guy she was dating. She's like a political groupie and is into all this new age stuff. There's not enough guys like this who saddle up to female politicians and writers and artists and have love children and such.
Where was Hillary Clinton's warlock?
Yeah.
A female politician doing like debates in Iowa with a love child in her womb would be amazing.
Yeah. Hey, just be like, don't ask about it. It's personal. Don't look at my all the reporters are too scared to ask if she's pregnant or just having a weight thing. But the filming is for these webisodes that are to go on the John Edwards website and their YouTube channel, and they're just kind of confessional, sort of reality show style videos that are not very well shot. The camera's kind of jiggling, and it's Rielle talking to John, and he's basically like, this is a bold thing that I'm showing you, a side of me that I haven't shown anyone else. That there's a John Edwards who's off the stage and in the plane. What am I like now? Can the world handle this? And Rielle Hunter is like, yes, not only can the world handle it, we need you. We need John Edwards, who she compares to Gandhi at one point. But
it's almost like American folklore that he takes up being like an egomaniac, and the problem gets progressively worse until he meets a witch that is going to film him all the time. And like,
yeah, this is going to be a fable in 100 years. But there's something strange afoot that journalists start to notice. He launches in 2006, even before the new year. He launches his 2008 presidential campaign, and the affair is ongoing. They chat over the phone, and in a very lawyerly way, she'll ask him if he misses her, and he says, "That's correct," but refuses to say "I miss you," or the words "I love you." He'll just say "Me too."
He brings his like lawyer's wit to his most intimate conversations on the phone.
Right? Yeah.
Like if Atticus Finch had an affair.
Yeah. And
he wants deniability, but the thing is, you don't produce video of the affair. Like, he's having her videotape him, so you're gonna know when they're in the same place. Right. And yeah, I don't think he really cares about the webisodes. He wants her there for something else that takes 3 to 8 minutes. And they also do end up making a video of the sex as well.
Yes.
Either when she's pregnant or on a tour in Africa. But yeah, the video does exist, and that's a big problem too.
That description of like Andrew Young clearing out Rielle's safe house where she's been like hunkered down so that she can't be interviewed by the news, and going through her belongings and coming across like a tape that had clearly been broken on purpose, and like being there with his wife and putting it like in the DVD player, VCR, whatever it was, and like it being your naked boss in like their sex tape. And he says like they both just couldn't look away, him and his wife.
Wow.
So
it's crazy.
They couldn't. That must have been really good. I guess she shot that one well.
I would just say, worth emphasizing on an aside, Rielle Hunter got fucking paid for this shit. Like, she got tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in her budget to film this stuff. I forget the exact number, but not only did she get to what sounds like stalk and then sleep with John Edwards, she also got paid for it. So she's kind of the hero of this story.
Yeah.
That's so funny. In 2006, like they're trying to figure out what to do with the internet, and they're like, oh yeah, this webisode seems like a good idea. Let's pay someone $200,000 to make TikToks about it.
Yeah, it really is like a social media consultant type thing. Which, the reporters start to notice, though, that the videos get taken down and she's still on the payroll. And this is perhaps John Edwards being a good lawyer and thinking like, well, this is going to look bad. This is obvious that there's something hot and heavy going on. So there's some weird whispers of something going on from the jump of this campaign, which is launched in New Orleans, in front of an area that's been really hurt by Hurricane Katrina, which is a really good place to highlight the two Americas that exist. I also got to give him credit for the 2008 campaign logo, which I remember thinking at the time was really good. It's his name, 08, and then I don't know why I like this so much. There's just a green swoosh with a star at the bottom, which makes me, it's kind of reminiscent of like climate change. Like, this is the environment in the little swoosh at the bottom here, which is another thing. The environment, a thing he does talk about, but in again, very vague ways. It's not really clear how what he's proposing would be that different from like cap and trade, for instance. But it's in theme with his campaign, which one of my favorite Onion headlines from this era is John Edwards pledges to end bad things by 2009.
It is perfect that he's saying, well, I don't really have a plan to fix the climate, but look, there's green in my logo.
Yeah.
All of his speeches are always like, people need to, they don't have any savings and they need to have savings. So we're going to change that to make people have some more savings. And it's like, none of these are like, all of this is just rhetoric. There's nothing really to this that is substantive at all, being a general good thing. The world's coldest take, you know?
Yeah, but he is bankrolled by someone who this appeals to, Bunny Mellon, who's that's a real name, Bunny Mellon, which is weird because I can imagine a world where bunnies eat melons. I don't know if they can digest those, but she's a dying breed, really. A liberal, I don't know, she's a billionaire, but definitely a multimillionaire. She's has grown up around American dignitaries in political circles and sitting on all this money, and she just kind of gives John Edwards whatever he wants. And in exchange, he comes and basically like flirts with her.
It's so fascinating. Another piece of like detail that makes his life so much like a fable. There are so many people like this in his life where they're like such larger than life figures, like, oh, like a 99-year-old like widowess named Bunny Mellon who loves when you come over and flirt with her. And so she gets you out of a lot of jams, like when you accidentally need a safe house for your mistress and you can't use campaign funds, or you shouldn't use campaign funds.
Yeah, a little more on Bunny. Yeah, so she's descended from Andrew Mellon, like Carnegie Mellon's named after the line that she's from. And her whole thing is, this guy's the new JFK, and I'm so old that I knew JFK and went to his White House at the time.
And sir, you are John F. Kennedy. That's she's saying. But yeah, it's
that's what the affairs were about. Was trying to channel that.
Yeah. No, I see. I remember.
He had me do exactly what John liked.
He does cheat with a blonde woman.
What's that?
Rielle is a blonde woman, so he has a white with darker hair, and he cheats with a blonde woman.
Yeah,
I don't know if Rielle's a Marilyn Monroe. She's crazy in different ways.
Yeah. Also, the flirting thing reminds me. I know people in New York who get paid just to hang out with old people, and I think sometimes there is like a sexual tension element to it. So that's kind of what he's doing, but on a mass scale to fund a presidential campaign.
This is basically the start of the premise to The Producers, to the Mel Brooks film and musical The Producers. Max Bialystock has to hang out with rich widowers to fund his graft.
Right. That's true. And yeah, there's definitely, like The Producers, there's money going into what ends up being a failed venture. Although I guess it's kind of the opposite in a way, because they want to win and the producers, they want to fail, but they end up succeeding. But definitely a lot of graft happening that later comes out in court.
One detail that I love is that the widower, her like late husband, was a Republican, and she'd say, "My husband would be rolling in his grave." You know?
Yeah, one of the good ones. About her, being a Dem. Yeah,
giving all this money to Edwards.
Right, and meanwhile, his own wife, Edwards' own wife, is riddled with cancer. She's going through it. In the mythology of it, and this is Rielle Hunter, as well as other people, they say that, it was difficult for her to have cancer, but she was the one who really wanted John to run. I don't know how true that is. It kind of seems like they both did, and he was going to run at all costs anyway.
Elizabeth's amazing. Elizabeth's an amazing person. She's dead now, so it's kind of hard to speak ill of the dead. She is very much like, I have cancer. Let's use it to make you president. I want to die as first lady. Like, she is a success monster, just like her husband.
Yeah. And going into 2007, like we said earlier, he was kind of going to be the alternative to Hilary. Who people were saying she had the nomination locked up. She was leading in the polls, but she was not faring very well in Iowa in the polls. She never really, her husband had run there in 1992, but didn't really make much effort to win Iowa because Tom Harkin had it locked up. So their connections were mostly in other states like New Hampshire, and she didn't really get the caucus system. Her campaign didn't. You have there's an interesting 2008 campaign book I was reading that was saying like Mark Penn, one of her consultants, was just like coming up with these really rosy victory scenarios, and the rest of the staff was like, "You're crazy. That's not going to work." And then she doesn't win. She comes in third. People forget that Edwards was the number 2. Obama won it, of course, in a historic victory. But on that caucus night, Edwards is actually kind of disappointed because they had thought that there's a pretty good chance he would win number 1, that it would beat Hillary and Obama, because he did well there in 2004 relatively. So that's kind of a hit for the campaign. That's hard to overcome. So after that, he kind of like pitches himself again as the left wing alternative to both these guys. And
if I can jump in really quickly, just for John Edwards' vanity delusion, he comes in second to Obama, and he's really thinking about spiking Hillary. It's around this time that he starts attacking Hillary more and more, including the audacity of her working with Wall Street when he's doing the exact same thing. Because, like you said, he's trying to fill the left lane. And he floats to his staffers that him and Obama will run on the same ticket.
Yep.
And they ask him, well, who's going to be the number 1? Who's number 2? And he's so convinced that Obama is just a passing fad that even though he came in second, he wants to offer the Veep spot to Obama.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah, it's definitely delusional. But some of his rhetoric, though, from this point forward, is, as we've been saying, really solid, good rhetoric. Like, he's attacking Clinton, and I'm like, yes, because he's saying in some of these debates, like, I believe in the Tooth Fairy, I believe in Santa Claus, but I do not believe that change will come from corporate Democrats. We can't just replace corporate Republicans with corporate Democrats. And I'm like, yes, even Ralph Nader at one point, I think this is around Iowa or New Hampshire, says that people should vote for John Edwards, which is, he's not very keen to weigh in on or endorse Democratic candidates at this point. But
there's a thing, though. There's just a thing where people think a black guy can't win. So he's hoping that if it's him and Obama, people will be like, okay, let's go with the white guy. And he's going to find out he's going to learn his lesson when Obama beats him in his home state.
Yes. And meanwhile, there's the $400 haircut thing becoming an issue. Honestly, that fact that he had the $400 haircut winds up basically is the, I think, reason for Mike Huckabee's success. It's potentially the reason he wins Iowa, because in one of those Republican debates, Mike Huckabee says, Congress is spending like John Edwards at a hair salon. And it absolutely brings down the House. And it was really through one-liners like that propelled Huckabee. We have another episode on him.
All the way to ambassador to Israel.
Yeah. So if John Edwards did not get that $400 haircut, we would have a different ambassador, would probably be just as bad. But still, that's actually uncovered, the $400 haircut thing, by the Obama campaign. Which, was trying to keep its hands clean or seem that way. But it's definitely like a bad image for Edwards. There's this video that comes out of him doing his own hair and makeup, and I Feel Pretty is playing. This was like an early viral video.
It was, yeah. It was people emailing it to each other. There's a famous scene, I think, in Game Change of John McCain and his staffers. They have the I Feel Pretty video on, and John McCain cannot get enough of this. He's like, hey, oh my God. Like he finds this delightful.
Yeah. John McCain can't even comb his own hair.
Right.
There's so many reasons, yeah.
There is the thing about John Edwards where, like, is he just a haircut? Is the haircut the entirety of him? And that's the problem also.
Yes. I mean, he goes into a haircut place and spends like it's a strip club. I think that like he is just this like Southern beautiful face vessel for, I don't know, like a surface level compassion. And this is what he thrives off of. And I think he loses New Hampshire with like 2%, which just shows you how he's not effective at all unless he's like in front of you shaking your hand and you can see how pretty he looks.
Yeah, he loses to Dean, Post Scream, and Wesley Clark as well as, oh, sorry, that's in 04. Yeah, he loses New Hampshire badly both times.
Yeah. But on this, like on the pretty thing, Maureen Dowd came up in Andrew Young's book in an interesting way. He pointed out that she has a habit of using gender to attack people, and will suggest that there's something wrong with men who display feminine traits. And this was a thing she just didn't like about John Edwards, that he cared too much about that he was a metrosexual. Another 2000s kind of relic. So if today maybe John Edwards would say like this is intolerance and bigotry and hate towards me, a metrosexual man, and I will give voice to all those metrosexual sons of mill workers out there.
And the Democrats hadn't moved that far left on gay rights. Like he still has to say marriage is between a man and a woman in both campaigns, and he's throwing out the lesbian line.
Well, that's what's so funny about that dig at like the Cheneys is they're Democrats, so they're like trying to have their cake and eat it too. To be like, oh, I bet you they're worse on this than we are. You know, like I bet you we're just right to them. They're not going to take a principled stance themselves. And
he in 2007, 2008, in some of these debates, there's like weird moments where you can tell he can't quite figure out what to say about gay marriage, and he's basically it was this funny moment in time where Democrats were all saying straight up like, yeah, I'm wrong, I will be right in like 3 or 4 years, but I need time to be right, I need to evolve is the term they used.
I mean, Obama and Clinton both were not supportive of legalizing gay marriage. I think Obama's 2008 opinion was civil unions. And exactly like you said, it's around 2011, 2012 where he says his views have evolved.
Right.
True leading from behind.
Yeah. Clinton, she wasn't even for same-sex marriage publicly until 2013, which is one of those things that, like, I wish Bernie would have hit her on, but regardless. But, yeah, there was another moment, too, from these debates where Edwards is talking about being a sinner, and he's like, I'll sin every day. I'm an imperfect human. I'm sinning. And the moderator asks, like, what are you referring to? And he's like, oh, just being a human being. We sin all the time. I'm sinning right now in 7 different counties. So there's like something slick about him that people are picking up on. And his wife, though, is like a counterweight to that. Everybody loves Elizabeth Edwards. Behind the scenes, though, we get kind of a mixed portrait of her from some of these accounts. There's one incident that's widely reported that during the 2008 campaign, she's in an argument with John, and I believe they're in an airline hangar, and she just rips off her shirt and yells at him and is like, do you see me now? Like she's really angry because she knows at this point he's admitted that he has cheated. But she doesn't know about the love child, and later and is maintaining. She believes, it seems, that it's Andrew Young's child. So his aide, his staffer, who writes this tell-all book, has to take responsibility for John Edwards' baby, which is kind of nuts. Like this is a guy who's. Andrew Young's faithfully wedded to his wife and remains so this whole time, and is saying, yep, it was me. I did it. At first it's under wraps, and they get this like villa where basically they have to hang out for her entire pregnancy, which does not seem pleasant. I felt really bad for Andrew Young's wife, Sherry, who is, skeptical of John Edwards this whole time, but then basically has to go along with her husband and wait on this woman for the duration of her pregnancy, and is like getting her coffee, and Rielle Hunter's like complaining about the coffee and like, well, now it's too hot, put some ice cubes in it. Like, it just seems like an absolutely miserable and kind of surreal time and place.
these people, like, this is their careers. They're in politics, and he's clearly cheating on his wife with cancer while running for president, and they're begging him, "Can you stop doing this?" And he can't. And it's like, for you to have like knocked up a 41-year-old woman, you have to have the worst pullout game of all time. And it's like, bro, there are so many, like, you're running for president. She has terminal cancer.
It's giving big, like, Renaissance courtier energy or court eunuch energy, that these people are falling on their swords for this fucking guy. The guy who was used as a measuring stick for Hilary's collapse in Iowa. Bro, he's not the winning horse. You got to see the writing on the wall.
So, yeah, Andrew Young's really weird. People say he's in love with John Edwards. And then I was like, well, maybe they're exaggerating. And then I was watching Andrew Young did like a talk about ethics or something recently. And he said, the man that I loved. And he was referring to John Edwards. So Andrew Young, it may be non-sexual, but he's just deep in this Edwards thing. Also, yeah, so they are staying in a villa. It's a huge mansion. And it is owned by a Edwards donor named Fred Barron, which is the most rich guy name possible. Even a combo of Trump's dad and son's names. Fred Barron. He's a big trial lawyer. The trial lawyers love Edwards. He's going to stop tort reform, and he's bankrolling.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Elizabeth is going to bat for her husband. She's saying he needs to be president and is lashing out at Ann Coulter, who calls him the F slur. And Elizabeth Edwards goes out of her way to do an interview on Hardball and call in actually while Coulter's on the panel and kind of get down in the mud with Ann Coulter, really defending her husband at a time where he's just lying to everybody. But
Coulter's kind of defending him too, because by calling him gay, you're going to throw the scent off that he's cheating on his wife with a woman.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, he should have ran with that. He should have gone the McGreevy route and been like, I am a gay American.
Like, he's such an empty suit, right? Like we've been saying, no policy, handsome guy. He's got a nice backstory. Sorry. But when they do focus groups, the fact that his wife is a little bit older and less conventionally attractive than him is a huge plus to him. Like you said, she raises his political fortunes. Why would you jeopardize that with your affair and love child, right? There's a story from Game Change where one pollster is literally quoted, a pollster in a focus group is quoted saying, I like that he has a fat wife. Which I read that and it's like, was Larry David in this focus group?
Larry David, who meets John Edwards on election night 2004, and probably went through Larry David's head. Honestly, like, should do a Curb episode about this.
Yeah,
So Rielle is before she gives birth. When she finds out she's pregnant, according to all accounts, apparently John Edwards does say, well, it's your decision if you want to keep it or not, which I'm sure there is still some calculus there, because if he either is the politician with a love child or he's the politician who pressured his mistress to get an abortion.
I think he knew there was no way that she was ever getting an abortion, and he was just like, I'm not even going to demonize myself like this, because like, she literally thought this child was going to be Buddha. Like, she describes like the potential for this child as being like a religious figure.
Yeah. Let me read the quote from
John's good looks.
Yeah. She believed the baby was carrying a combination of his intellectual brilliance and her spiritual superiority, was some kind of golden child. The reincarnated spirit of a Buddhist monk who was going to save the world. There was no way she was going to have an abortion.
Yeah, man. Imagine the pressure that must be on poor Quinn, who's now like 17 or 18. But yeah, he says, whatever your decision. And then he was meanwhile renewing his vows with Elizabeth at Wendy's. which is
right.
They have this cute little story about how they got engaged at Wendy's, and they go there every year on their wedding anniversary. Anecdotally, in 2004, John Kerry and his wife were like disgusted by this. They went to Wendy's together, and then John and Teresa went to their hotel room and ordered a bunch of like lobster and steaks and champagne and stuff.
Just imagine that position for him, where it's like you are cheating on your wife. I think is he aware that she's pregnant at this point with his child, and you still have to show up to these public events and renew your vows during like this political season. Like, just talk about like the tension of his life is turned up to 100. It's insane.
And he seems like in denial. Like he still thinks that, well, then maybe he's going to get the nomination. And if he doesn't, maybe he can get the VP slot. Maybe he'll even, which is, I frankly remember thinking this myself at the time, maybe he could be Obama's attorney general, which that could have been a possibility. If this thing doesn't happen,
right?
Maybe he would have been in Eric Holder's shoes, which frankly, probably, there's a chance he would have been a better AG and actually gone after Wall Street and did what the country really wanted at that point. But that didn't happen. But there's a photo that comes out from the National Enquirer when she's 7 months pregnant. And at this point, the pregnancy can't be denied. So Andrew Young has to lie and say that it is his child, which reading about this really did give me kind of a newfound respect for the National Enquirer. I will say, like it was a punchline in the 2000s and before. It's like a tabloid, which we don't really have tabloids so much anymore. But
you see that and you're like, they may have convinced us all that John McCain had a black love child in 2000, but you know what? The National Enquirer or the tabloids are part of the Fifth Estate. They're the only ones willing to cover the stories like these.
Right. It's a funny little thing because they will. I mean, they're poo-pooed by other journalists because they will pay sources. Which is seen as unethical, but sometimes the source, that gives sources sometimes incentive to lie, but sometimes that's the only way to get them to spill the beans. There's a chance this all would have come out anyway, but they're really on this story from the jump, and it's kind of not seen as serious by other people.
The thing is, the lie about it being just her and Andrew Young actually does work. Like it keeps everyone away, and it works. And he loses not because of that. He loses because Barack Obama exists and just destroys him in his own lane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember thinking at the time when it broke, I was like, that's weird that, he had an affair, but so did his guy who worked for him. Well, that's, I guess if it's on the news, it must be true. But little do we know that was also a lie. He drops out after South Carolina, where he doesn't do very well. He's really banking on racism and sexism. He's hoping like enough Democrats will decide we're not ready for a black person or a woman to be president, and they nominate Obama anyway.
I saw that's what, like, when he got the New Hampshire results, it's like, okay, this is a state full of white people. He's rubbing his hands together, hoping they're both like too racist and too sexist to vote for either a white woman or a black man, and they do not.
Right.
Not vote for him.
Hillary wins at New Hampshire, and then it's a two-person race. He was half right, though. America is too sexist to elect a woman so far. I'm just wrong about the racist part.
Yeah. Something I found funny about this. So there's a small storyline in The Politician, the Andrew Young book, that their neighbor, the Edwards' neighbor, they did not get along with. They had like property disputes or something. And the neighbor also was a Rudy Giuliani supporter.
Let's go.
Who was running for president. At some point, we're going to do a Rudy Giuliani episode. I'm looking forward to that.
Here's a fun tidbit for you from an episode that we just recorded. When they were looking for someone with gravitas to manage the occupation of Iraq before they set up the Iraqi civilian government, the Bush administration considered Rudy Giuliani.
Oh my God. You know,
Mayor
you would
Iraq.
think that you would think it wouldn't have there's no other worse way to do that, the occupying of Iraq, but that may have actually been, wow, imagine the way he is now with like all the weird scandals. He's like totally bankrupt and is hitting on like 19-year-olds. He's also in charge of Iraq. But the neighbor had a sign, a Rudy Giuliani sign, and Elizabeth hated it. But ironically, Giuliani and Edwards drop out on the same day. So naturally, he becomes sort of a coveted endorsement from both Clinton and Obama. Elizabeth really wants John to endorse Clinton, but Obama comes to Edwards' house, to the giant compound, and they play basketball. They play horse on the UNC replica court, which Obama thinks is cool. And that's
I love
a real
that story. That he's like talking to his wife about it, and he's like, "Obama loved the court. We played in horse. I won."
Yeah.
Like this is the reason for why he's going to give his endorsement. He's like waiting by the phone every day for one of them to offer him anything.
Yeah.
Actually, he just like reaches out and is like, "I want to be vice president," or I think maybe it was vice president again, but to like base it off of a basketball game with Obama and a game of horse, and choosing like Obama over Hillary is such a great microcosm for that entire election, where like Hillary is just constantly suffering from being so much less cool the entire election.
And
I am fun. I can play horse. I like basketball.
And she ends up making appeals to the voters that Edwards says he can win, the white working class people who vote in Democratic primaries, of which there were not a ton, but that's who kept her afloat in those spring months. There was a story that Edwards, his campaign, had reached out to the Obama campaign and tried to cut a deal for him to drop out. I think it was before he dropped out, and said like, well, I'll drop out and endorse Obama if I become the VP pick. And Obama is reported as saying, like, anyone who makes that deal should not be the president, which kind of feels like a quote that was invented by one of his people and said. But that was a possibility. He does endorse Obama basically when it's too late to matter. It's after North Carolina, so that's probably doesn't do him any favors that he waited so long. It's mathematically impossible at this point, essentially, for Clinton to win the nomination, but she's like still running. And this helps kind of put some nails in the coffin. But he becomes a contender once again 4 years later as the VP nominee. And he wants, it seems like he wants that job. That would have been, I think, a pretty stupid decision, though, for Obama to pick the last guy who lost in that same slot as the next VP nominee. I don't know how you guys think that would have.
Yeah, I don't think Obama seriously considered. I think he had the stench of losing on him. Also, and I don't know that Edwards is that young at this point, but it still feels like you wanted a guy like someone who seems older and more experienced. Yeah, and certainly, Joe Biden has that up the wazoo.
Right. Yeah, you want a really old person, someone who would never dream of running for president after they're done being vice president. If they were to run, they would be so old they literally could not do the job, is what Obama was thinking.
They wanted old, white, and boring, and it was only years later that we realized he was old, white, and kind of interesting in a fun way, fun, horrifying way.
Yeah, it turns out he's we did an episode actually about Biden 1988, and he's always been a very petty, vindictive man who's very insecure. That definitely came through. But John Edwards, speaking of which, petty, vindictive, insecure man, his daughter is born a week after he drops out, and this is kind of where the photo happens, the infamous photo, which I didn't realize. So this, just to clarify, this photo is not lifted from the sex tape. Is that correct, Fred?
There's a photo of her in a wheelchair, I think. Is that what you're talking about?
No, the one where he's in like the blue, it almost looks like a nurse shirt, and he has the baby. He's like looking at it. They don't have sex after that, right?
No, okay, so that's the weird thing with the sex tape is Andrew Young says it's when Rielle's pregnant. And Rielle is very offended by this because she says it was taken before she was pregnant and that she does not look pregnant in the video. So it's a little bit of a insulting thing. I do also want to say one other thing about the sex tape is John Edwards is playing to the camera in the sex tape, according to a reporter who saw it. So he is hamming it up during that sex tape.
Wow.
He's loving having the camera. He's making a webisode. I'll make a webisode. And I love, too, that Andrew Young puts it in a safe deposit box and tells his lawyer, if I die mysteriously, you need to release this tape.
I hope that before they release it, though, they set it to I Feel Pretty.
Trying to think of another Sound of Music song that would fit there, but I can't. But yeah, so there is a separate photo that is John Edwards going to meet his little girl. I think it's after he's made an appearance on the Tonight Show, and that ends up in the media. At first, it's like, is this real? But this is before deep fakes and AI, so hard for him to deny. And then you also have the sex tape, which is I was not able to uncover it on the internet. I definitely tried. I wanted to see it, but it's very few people have actually watched this sex tape. The identifying factor for Rielle Hunter is that she wore a distinctive bracelet, and Andrew Young noticed it and was like, "I've seen that bracelet on Rielle. It must be her."
If he drops the sex tape now, he could be the 2028 nominee. We're ready for this. Yeah. Kim Kardashian this. Yeah. He still looks pretty good. Yeah. He could come back right there.
Hey, it's not too late. He's still eligible. He's sitting around North Carolina as a lawyer, not doing too much. He gave a debate to the at Oxford. They have their debating society, and I watched his statement, and I don't even know what the topic was because his entire statement was just about himself. He's just talking about the same story he tells over and over and over again about being the son of a Milwaukee.
John Edwards is a young 71 right now. Yeah, he would not be one of our older presidents at this point. So he's ready.
Yeah, but here comes the Nightline interview, which is really what ends his ambitions, his prospects for having any kind of office, because doesn't get the vice presidency. He can serve in Obama's cabinet. We mentioned AG, maybe a poverty czar or something, because that's another thing that's going on. Bunny Mellon, who is really hurt that John did not attend her daughter's funeral, which is that's the one thing she wanted in exchange for these oodles and oodles of money, is that John Edwards
political patronage. You can't even go to the funeral,
right? He's says he's busy weighing his endorsement decision, and that's why he's just too busy thinking, just looking at a picture of Obama and then one of Hilary and glancing back and forth and trying to make the right call.
Yeah, he's also trying to I think at this point his stock is declining so quickly, and he's just trying to sell. He's trying to get anything for his endorsement, and that was such a funny moment of him just negotiating lower and lower and lower to the point where he's ambassador for Slovakia. It really just goes to the lowest, whatever he can get. The stock is tanking.
The thing is, he never had a base. He's just everyone's second choice. Oh, that John Edward guy, he's handsome. Sure, I'll pick him second. He's not his endorsement's not going to matter because he just doesn't move that many voters.
Yeah, it's he'll say things that unions would like, but then again, the policy background isn't there, so they don't go with him. And the left doesn't, he can't really fully he gets, like I said, endorsements from Nader, but not, he's not totally serious. So he doesn't get that kind of diehard base. But he does want to set up, with Bunny Mellon's help, a poverty foundation, an anti-poverty foundation. And that's kind of floating in the ether in the summer of 2008 is like, what do we do next? We do the Poverty Foundation. Maybe Andrew Young can get a job even after he's confessed to this love child, which we now know is John's love child. But he denies that in his big public interview, which he times to coincide with the 2008 Olympics. And this felt like a somewhat of a 2000s thing to me, because this is around this era in the 90s as well, was I think of as in part the era of like the confessional interview. Oprah, Diane Sawyer, Bob Woodruff, who interviews John Edwards. Like, if you've done something really bad and everybody knows you as the person who did the bad thing, at least you get to talk to Oprah about it. Come
now
clean.
This would just be like a screenshot of his notes app where he
Right.
wrote, I've been wrong.
Yeah. Right.
So Rielle has to do one interview, and the guy she's confessing to is literally Chris Cuomo.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he's like acting so well, but he's pretending he thinks adultery is bad, even though, you know, his family, like, if you don't adulter, they call you gay or something.
Yeah.
There's a moment in that Nightline interview I love too, where the news person is like, there's a seat next to you that's empty. Any reason why your wife isn't here right now? And he goes, well, I don't like when people parade their wives on television. You know, it's not. And it's like, just thinking about him all through 06 to 08, like doing that exact thing to his wife, like while she had cancer.
Yeah.
Making her lie for him. Yeah, he's an incredibly horrible person.
Right. And that comes through in this interview, because even though he has this chance to start anew and do something after this, he insists on, because he's still, I don't know what the logic is, I think it's a lawyer thing, he confesses that yes, he made a mistake. I mean, he's asked by Woodruff, did you have an affair? And instead of saying yes, he says he wants to give his prepared lawyer statement, and he says, I made a terrible mistake in 2006. Which it isn't clear if that means it was an ongoing affair or a one-off thing, which he really wants people to think it is. So he does acknowledge he cheated on Elizabeth. However, he is not the father. Bring out Maury, do the paternity test. I am not responsible for that baby. And no money was paid in his name or with his knowledge to cover it up. And he says, my Lord and my wife have forgiven me, and that his marriage is going to survive. And it's just like clearly a lie. And
a line I love from that interview too is he says, and just to be clear, it wasn't my family's fault at all.
Good. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. It's really thinking that Jack and Emma whispered in your ear that you should cheat on mom with a witch.
Probably like not the best metaphor to use here, but he really is splitting the baby on this one.
Yeah.
Like, I will confess to the affair, but not the pregnancy or the love child or the campaign finance reform. I'm going to dip my toe into the water of confessing.
Yeah, SNL even makes fun of him saying like that because the baby was conceived in June 2007, and him saying like, oh, I guess, well, I didn't have sex with after 2006, so I guess the baby was born in like the 15th trimester or whatever. An amazing birth.
Because I guess that's he doesn't want people to think the affair was going on while he was running for president, I guess. I don't know why he would. I mean, there's other obvious reasons why he doesn't want to take responsibility for being the father of Quinn, and that's Elizabeth, because he has told her this whole time, it was a one-off thing, but then Andrew, he kept having sex with Rielle Hunter. He just couldn't help himself. They love each other. I guess.
Oh my God. Yeah, that is the implication.
Yeah. If she thinks, Edwards is Gandhi, I guess she thinks Andrew Young is, I don't know, the other Andrew Young who was an ambassador to the UN or something. But he's telling this lie this whole time, and then eventually, and this is where it gets really sad. he has to come clean about it because it's going to court. His old pal Obama, who he shot horse with, is in the White House, and Eric Holder, maybe this is why, but the DOJ, which maybe would have been run by Edwards, is investigating him, and they indict him for misuse of campaign funds because, as it turns out, money went to supporting Rielle Hunter and his love child. And at this point, he basically has to say, okay, yeah, it was me. I lied about that one too. But the really sad part is Elizabeth finds out about this, and then this is the final straw. She breaks up with him. They start to get divorced, but before it can become a full legal divorce, she passes away.
Mm-hmm.
And surely he went after that, still date Rielle. No, him and Rielle are still a couple the whole time. Even in her book, she's like, at the end, she's like, oh yeah, we're still together. I'm not sure when they stopped being together, but yeah,
I think it was 2015, she said in an interview that they broke up.
So he's carrying on with her even 5 years after Elizabeth is gone.
Yeah. And he's completely kicked Andrew Young to the curb. He's, there's some, and this is the reason Young justified it to himself, is like, okay, well, his political career is shot, but this anti-poverty foundation, that would be good. Maybe I can get a job there. As it turns out, this foundation does not come to light. Edwards has said, I think in that interview with Woodruff, he's like, I want to be the Al Gore of poverty. The way Al Gore talks about climate change, that's what I'm going to do for getting kids rec centers and stuff, which is basically what a lot of his proposals were. And yeah, he kind of faded away from public consciousness and is now a trial lawyer in North Carolina. I watched a clip of him, like one of the most recent interviews he did, which is like with a local news reporter. And I'm sure he demanded that they not talk about the sex scandal and stuff or go into too great detail. But he's like, I just love being in the courtroom. I'm a trial. I love being in there. I really love connecting with jurors and doing what I do. So at least he's happy doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's still real rich. Yeah, he has plenty of money. That's He didn't end up broke.
Yep. And neither did Rielle Hunter. I take it she has some kind of payout, and she sold. She wrote a book with Quinn, with her daughter. It was like a children's book, I believe, about like how even mommies make mistakes or something like that. But they were together. She maintains that John Edwards is a good dad and is involved. I do feel bad for Quinn, obviously. Like, that must be really messed up. But I guess they are like open with her about it, and so hopefully she doesn't have too big of a complex. But man, I can't imagine.
He's a pretty mixed dad. There's one time when like he's supposed to take care of the kids, and like the kids just end up walking around naked and like it's completely disorganized. Like, he actually doesn't know how to take care of kids. But his kids do love him. Like, he's at the trial or outside the trial doing press conferences. 28-year-old daughter's with him. Like, his kids still talk to him and still stand by him, probably because of the money. But he is beloved by all his kids.
I took him down to the swimming hole, I think, is actually what had happened in that day at the hotel. The wife was freaking out because he's like, you put John in charge of the kids? Ain't nothing going to happen from going skinny dipping in the water hole.
And they're near Disneyland, too. They're not in like some, retreat out of nowhere.
Well, it could be like, well, in mill towns, we don't have swimsuits. That's a luxury for the other America.
It is wild to me that Hunter wrote a children's book. Like, I know politicians love writing children's books. Barack Obama wrote one called Of Thee I Sing. I just pulled this up. Who else? Hilary and her daughter wrote a children's book. And these are clearly not like actually targeted at children. They're targeted for well-meaning libs to get, their kids the books from the politicians they like. But to write a children's book about this guy who had an affair, like, how is this the source material for a children's book? It's wild.
Yeah, it's called How We Do It by Rielle Hunter, and she had her daughter do like press for it with her, which seems really weird. But it's it's called How We Do It: Finding Happiness Right Now. Right now is in caps. And
Is it like a children's book or a self-help book?
it seems like both. It's there's a picture of Quinn on the cover with a pony, and Quinn shows kids how to find happiness by practicing mindfulness.
Classic.
Yeah.
I'm just glad Quinn didn't die of measles, okay? Because Rielle is the most anti-vax lady coded person I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's not too late. We'll see with this RFK Jr. in charge. Well, we'd like to round out by trying to imagine what would have happened if the person somehow won. Trying to think of what John Edwards' best bet would be. It's hard to envision a 2016 scenario where John Kerry has been in office for 2 terms and he gets elected. I guess it's possible. 2008, Obama doesn't run. I could see maybe he beats Hilary. The sex scandals would maybe come to light while he's president, which would be Clinton part 2. It would be very odd to have like the almost exact same dynamics repeated almost like a decade later. But
do you think he could have beaten Bush in 2004?
I think it's possible. I think the experience thing, I mean, Obama didn't have a lot of experience. I think Iraq was a big, not having a solid position on Iraq would kind of hurt you. But also, like, if the war, I mean, you guys know more about this, was pretty popular at that point. So to be anti-war was a risky move, genuinely, even though that's the right thing to do, obviously. But I do think also the fact that Kerry and Bush were both skull and bones and like from these elite backgrounds, I think turned a lot of people off of that election. So if you have somebody who is, from a blue collar background, maybe that helps him win a few more states. But it also, I think he could have stood a chance in 2004 because one thing I remember at the time as a 13-year-old is all these people saying, even Republicans being like, Bill Clinton was a really good president. Didn't like everything he did, but he was really good at being the president because what they're thinking of is when at a time where things were more stable. So I think that Clinton nostalgia may have helped propel Edwards to the top.
Because, that's the Andrew Young argument is that Edwards was surging in Iowa, and if he had another week, he would have beaten Kerry in Iowa, gotten a bump, and then has presumably been president. And collapse the 2 Americas into one very happy America.
See, I see a world where if he gets to the top of the ticket in 2004, what that does to his ego is, unimaginable, right? If he was cooking this hard just off being a Veep nominee and then the 3rd place guy in 2008, I think whatever scandal we would have had would have made Rielle Hunter look like nothing. I can't see a world where he goes up against the 2004 era Cheney Bush juggernaut without an even larger life implosion than we eventually saw.
Jordano, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to imagine. I guess, I mean, he's obviously better. He's such a moron, but he's still better than like Bush in that 2nd term. I mean, you can't let these neocons stay in power after starting that war, and so I guess it would have been good. But yeah, to Ben's, I just don't think he makes it through the entire term. He will burn like the sun because he's ascended way too high for his own mental stability and egotism. So it would have been so hysterical to see what kind of trouble would have gotten him out of the office, considering the things that have already happened to him and he's not going to stop himself from doing. He said that he slept with Rielle because he was in an egomaniac state where he believed he could do no wrong. So it's I'm just going to do whatever I want. So just imagine him being more careless and more emboldened to do whatever he wanted. It's too bad he couldn't point these things like in the right direction idealistically, and instead they were just like pointed at the ovaries of a woman near him. But yeah,
the op-eds would have been incredible if he were in the Oval Office and some of these scandals started to break. Like, there's a throwaway line in Game Change where they say some people were writing, "Is it fair to the country to have a president whose wife is so sick? Won't he be torn between his loyalty to his family and his loyalty to the country?" Now imagine he's got two families, because he does.
Two Americas, two families.
Two Americas, two families. Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's a good note to end on. Ben and Jordano, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you and your stuff?
Yeah, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We have a main feed. The pod is called Remember Shuffle. We talk about the 2000s, but it's not purely a nostalgia pod. We like to talk about the long-term impacts of stuff that happened 20 years ago, how we still see it today. We cover a wide variety of topics. We do lots of movie reviews, but usually as a springboard to talk about something else. We do geopolitics. We've done TV shows, all kinds of stuff, ephemera from 20 years ago. Plus, we have an ongoing series that we are both very proud of, where we're doing a deep dive into the Iraq War. We got 3 episodes recorded on that so far, probably 2 or 3 more to come. It's not the funniest listening, but it's pretty informative. And we also now have a Patreon. So if you want to find us, we're at patreon.com/remembershuffle. You can find all the links in our link tree for everything.
Yeah, this was a great topic for us to come on for. Thank you for the invite, because he's such a great, like, 2000s, almost like Forrest Gumpian figure. He kept like, popping his head. Like, we have an episode on each of the elections that happened in the 2000s, which I'd recommend. And he makes an appearance in like 2008 and 2004. And like Forrest Gump, he's in this like fable, Southern Gothic fable where I guess unlike Forrest Gump, things don't go so well for him. But like Forrest Gump, he ends the story being fabulously wealthy.
Yeah, that's great. He opens the decade as the sexiest politician and then ends it as the worst husband possible.
Only in America.